folks who were here at the very first Lion and Pirate open mic, like 1,000 years ago. And they're here today to read from their new novel, Bill and Bev Kemp. Do y'all want the stand or the chair?
Stand's fine. It has been a while since we did it.
Four. Oh, yeah. Good.
We almost got kicked out, didn't I? You remember, were you here? Were you here? It got a little loud, didn't it? Yeah. We had a good time.
Oh, we did have a microphone and a band and
Well,
drums.
yes. We've been around a long time. 45 some odd years. We've been over almost 50 years. We've been married together.
Oh, yeah.
Long time.
That's good.
And we write together, which is unusual because most authors don't write. Terrible. And we've had children, we've had businesses, we've had ups, we've had downs. She's had 2 hips replaced, you know, and everything.
And a kidney removed, so.
We never fight over
I'm a
anything.
bionic woman.
That's the book. The book. You say the book. You're always fighting over the book because you write something and then you give it to somebody to edit, and what do? They just tear up your stuff and they rewrite it, and it's no good. So it took us a long time, probably 15 years to write this book, and it was instigated. You know, an author likes to say, well, you know, this is our book, we wrote this book, but the inspiration for this book came from a dear friend of ours. His name is Claude Bramlett. He's a professor. He's retired from UT anthropology. He first told us the story of John Weber and Sylvia Hector. And when I first heard what was going on with that, you know, it just kind of didn't believe what he was telling me. And after a while, Claude and his wife and Beverly and I got to know each other. So there is a place, I don't know, does anybody in here know where Weberville, Texas is? Weberville? East of 25 miles east of here is a little town called Weberville, Texas.
Solar panels are.
Yeah, okay, there you go. It's on the river, right on the
Yeah,
Colorado.
the solar farm, yeah.
The solar farm, yeah. High on the hill above Weberville, Texas, is supposedly the old fort, the original fort that a man by the name of John Weber built. And 15 years ago, Beverly and I and Claude and a man from the Texas State Historical Commission, Mark Denton, we journeyed up all through the hills until we had a guide, a man who had lived there for years, until we found what we thought was the original Weber store. And it's recorded. We had a geopolitical device, whatever, you know, your marking place and all that. So, but it was a story. It was a story of these 2 people. I'm just going to read you from the back of the book. I can see it. And by the way, the title of the book is Forbidden Love. It's not a cheesy romance novel. You don't judge this book by its title. It was a forbidden love.
Okay.
She was born an African princess in 1790, only to be sold into slavery. He was from a wealthy white family in New England. Even though forbidden by the church, the joining of John F. Weber and Sylvia Hector was the first 19th century racially mixed marriage. Now think about that for a minute. Yeah. Forbidden Love, and this is the book, we try, you know, let me stop right there and talk about historical novel. When Claude, we were talking to Claude about writing this book, we have a good friend by the name of Owen Egerton. He has written, his last novel was Hollow, to rave acclaim. You've heard Owen. And Owen told us that, what was it, that fiction was the bridge to truth. That if you're going to write a novel, a historical novel, you have to know the 5 things about the people and the events in that novel. And it's everything, those 5 things are the things you learn in journalism school, which we both went to Columbia in Missouri, Mizzou Journalism School. And it's the who, what, when, where, and why of your story. Well, we know the who. We know the who. We know the who is John F. Weber from Vermont and Sylvia Hector, who was a slave. Who, what, the what? Well, he was white, she was black. When probably most of the early to the late part of the 19th century, these two people lived till they were 90-something years old. 90 years old. Who, what, when? The where? Right here. Right here in central Texas towards Weberville. And the why? They were in love. That's why they were together. And they met, I don't want to tell too much, give away the book, they won't buy the book. I'm trying to think, what should I say here?
So I shut him up and get the hook?
Yeah. No, I'm glad to quit anytime. We got one page. We got one page. Just one. We participate in something Owen does called the One Page Salon over on the east side, and you're allowed to read one page out of your forthcoming novel. And so we thought, well, just bring one page and read that. But you don't know what's happening on this page that we're going to read because the page we're reading happens about 2/3 the way through the book. You don't know yet that that Sylvia was born in Africa. She was kidnapped. She was brought to this country on a slave ship. On the way, her mother died. She was picked up by another woman who was nursing her child, and that child died. And, you know, it's a long story. It goes on and on until they finally meet unexpectedly in Albany, New York. And I'm not telling you. But they meet in Albany, New York, and there's only one problem. That the fact that when John Weber first looks at Sylvia, he falls immediately in love with her. And the problem is, Sylvia belongs to someone else. And I don't mean when I say belongs to someone else, she's not married to someone else, she's not engaged to someone else, she's somebody else's freaking piece of property. She belongs to another man. So John Weber is so enamored of this woman that he goes back to his home in Vermont, he gets all the money that he could scrape together, returns to Albany, New York, and purchases this woman from her owner, Werner Hector. And he takes her back home. They live there. They try to get together as a couple, but it doesn't work out. The people in Vermont drive them out. So there's only one thing it's about this time that Moses Austin, not Stephen Austin, but his father Moses Austin, is getting some land grants from, I don't know, Generalissimo, whoever, down in Mexico City, right? And it's all in the New England newspapers. So he buys passage for not only him, but Sylvia and all the belongings to move to Tejas. And they get here in 1820, early 18. First people, they were here before Austin's 300. They were here before, they came upriver on a pole boat. When they finally got to their destination, how they knew is in the book. You got to read the book to find out how they knew. This is where they settled down. Only later on, later years, and this is where we're going to get into reading this piece. They built a fort, they built a farm. I don't know how many acres they had. They had a headright, horses, mules. They were successful. Sylvia had 11 children of her own and 15 children that she adopted. Not only white children, Indian children, all these children. Yeah, very colorful, and it was. But the story transverses. John Weber fought in the War of 1812. He was at the Alamo. This is where we might have used a little bit of fiction in our telling of the story, seeing how we got him at the Alamo. He had a reason to be there, but you know, when Colonel Travis draws that line in the sand, I think everybody pretty much crossed it, but we have Mr. Weber staying behind, so we need to get him out of the Alamo, back home, because when he gets there, he finds out that his headright, it's called a headright, his land has been taken over by a man by the name of James Burleson, who, well, I get all excited when I talk about it. All right.
I don't know what to do.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read, we're just going to read this one page where John and Sylvia, I think I told enough about it now, they're outside, they've been kicked off their headright. They've been thrown out. They're down close to the Colorado River. There's houses down there now. There's, all kind of, Weberville was at one time kind of like Manor. Back at the turn of the century, there was a lot of people. There was a lot going on because it was on the river. It was the only way of getting back and forth. So it's nighttime. John and Sylvia are outside. After all 9 children were put to bed, John and Sylvia sat outside, silently puffing on their pipes. They were at an impasse. Neither Weber wanted to speak his or her mind until the others said their piece. Finally, John took Sylvia's hand in his. What do you think? Do we stay and fight, or do we run? I've come down on both sides, and I don't like either outcome. Sylvia petted the top of John's hand.
If we want to live to see our grandchildren, I vote we move. Most everything is packed and waiting for the next boat out of here. I just couldn't bear the thought of you or Henry dying for a hopeless cause.
You say leave by boat. You're not suggesting we go farther upriver, are you? From my own observation, the land is sparse and hilly, only good for bumblebee cotton. There would be little hope for providing enough food to feed this family. Shaking her head, Sylvia said,
I'm suggesting we go downriver until we get to the ocean, then go south, and we're far, far away from this bigotry.
John thought for a moment. And tell me, Sylvia, what do we do for money?
Oh dear, that's already been taken care of.
Sylvia reached inside her sackcloth apron to pull out a leather patch.
Here,
She said, dropping the heavy bag in John's lap.
that's a load off my chest. And John, just so you know, there's over $1,000 in gold coins inside that purse.
And move they did. They left Weberville. They had to leave. They were thrown out. They got on a boat. They went down the Colorado River to the ocean. They got on another boat, and they got out at Matamoros or Brownsville, in that area down there. They moved inland to a place called Donna, Texas, and that's where John Weber's grave is, where he's buried today. Sylvia, it's thought at one time she had returned to Africa, to her roots, to find out the tribe that she came from, but you'll have to read the book. This is a prayer.